Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our panel. I think the discussion here today is thoughtful. It is in depth, at least somewhat, and certainly, I think, constructive as we do move forward on very serious issues. I think we can all agree that we have unmet infrastructure needs across our country, and what that means to various parts of our country can mean different things. But as the representative of one of the nation's most rural and in many cases remote districts, we have a lot of infrastructure, a little different than perhaps the metro subway and other mass transit. But we also have the world's largest rail classification yard, Bailey Yard in North Platte. We have more than 3,000 dams in the state, thousands of miles of irrigation canals. We have a large portion of the existing Keystone Pipeline as well as the proposed route for the Keystone XL pipeline. We have more than 65,000 square miles of land, the vast majority of which is privately owned across 75 counties. I could go on with more details about my district, but I do have concerns that simply raising the gas tax without implementing other reforms would merely get us a more expensive version of the status quo, which we know troubles most of us. But let me be clear, our job in this committee is to figure out how to fund infrastructure, not necessarily make the rules for projects, but I certainly want to reflect on the fact that I have concerns about moving forward with increasing a tax without some corresponding reforms and improvements in public policy. So I hope we can get there. I hope that we can continue a constructive discussion as we are having today. Mr. Scribner, you referenced the need to address issues such as labor requirements, permitting rules, and lack of life cycle cost accounting to improve how transportation dollars are spent. Could you briefly expand on those comments?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Smith. So those are areas where we see great variation. Say, take labor regulations, for instance. If you're in a high union density state and we're getting a federal top-down labor requirement, that may not impact you very much because you have the workers of that type of workforce are already unionized. But if you go to a state with lower union density, that's where you can see substantial cost increases to those projects. So this is the same goes for environmental permitting requirements, the lack of life cycle costing, where we may get a low bid on the initial construction, but that doesn't take into account the entire project life and those costs that are borne across that time span. So I think we need some basic standards and to recognize that one size doesn't fit all, that certain solutions are going to work better in different states than in others. But as you said, simply increasing the fuel tax and spending more money through the current channels is just going to be a more expensive status quo.
Okay, thank you. It was mentioned earlier about climate change, and the efforts have been described in a number of ways. But Mr. Speer, can you elaborate a little bit in terms of how your industry is already acting on efficiency of energy consumption and various methods there?
Certainly, Congressman. The two highest costs to our industry are labor and fuel. So it is in our best interest to find newer technologies that make the equipment more energy efficient. We're obviously looking ahead 5, 10, 15 years out at alternative fuel vehicles. But in the near term, it's making diesel-powered tractors more efficient. And I think you're seeing tremendous strides in terms of the technology that's coming out of our truck and trailer OEMs. So we believe that the savings that you can get by investment in infrastructure could have a dramatic impact on reducing our carbon footprint. I mentioned $74.5 billion our industry loses each year sitting in traffic. That's 425,000 drivers sitting idle for an entire year. That is a very measurable amount of CO2 that we're emitting, and we're just 4% of the vehicles on the road. Mm-hmm. So we're moving 71% of the economy, but 4% of the vehicles on the road. So you count in all the passenger vehicles that are sitting in traffic, that is a huge impact on the climate. So investing in infrastructure does make a difference, and it will certainly have a benefit to the environment.
Thank you. And just briefly, Mr. DiLoretto, the annual report card that you do highlights, the grades. Can you explain briefly how rail infrastructure received the highest grade of any sector?
Absolutely, Congressman Smith. Rail actually did a lot of investment in their system, some $20 billion in 1 year alone. And it was those investments that they made in the freight rail system that got their grade up. So where we see categories of infrastructure that invest, the grades go up. The condition is better, handles the capacity, operations and maintenance are taken care of. And that's how they got the highest grade.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.